know, in the entrepreneurship world, time is precious, and make sure that you always remember that. I think that in entrepreneurship, a lot of us do stuff without putting a value on our time, and just because things are free, they're not actually free. So that's a separate conversation, but just think about that. So I appreciate 30 minutes. I'm going to try and 20-minute presentation. Throw questions at me as we go through. We'll have a Q&A at the end. As I said, I've been involved in startups for 30 years. Entrepreneurship has ballooned in the last 10. And what I noticed was a lot of talk around funding, investment ready, sales process, recruitment and operations, vision boards, nothing about supplier choices. How do you make sure that you're finding the best suppliers, partners for your business? And I'll briefly talk about my career, and you'll see the successes have come where that's been really robust, and the failures have come where it hasn't been. So before I kick off, look, in the room, who has got suppliers? Either just raise your hand or show. Navin, brilliant. So we've got Navin, Robin, Ollie. Navin or Robin, what suppliers have you got, and how did you choose them or find them?
I can start. So one of the things I've got a marketing agency that I use who do my marketing. I mean, they're effectively like a bit inbuilt team now, but obviously I pay them. I found them because actually the guy who runs it, I did sales training and coaching for another business he was part of, and I trained their sales team. That he really liked it and everything, and he got in touch. He ended up leaving that business and putting more effort into his marketing agency. And actually, we got a chat one day, and I was like, actually, why don't you do my marketing for me? So I said, I've taught you well because you ended up selling to me.
Good. And it sounds as though that's been a successful relationship.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I think with me, it's probably a bit my personality. I'm very happy. I'm always very conscious that there could be someone doing something even better.
Yeah.
And I think what I've been very impressed with is their level of support. I can call him at 9 o'clock in the night, for example, and he'll be available. If I don't do that, but that's the attitude. I like the attitude. Although there are some things, for example, I don't think that they're that great at YouTube marketing, right? And that's something that I want to be able to tap into more. So there are some things where I'm like, I've got to treat it like obviously a business is a business. So yeah. I'm always open to, and I'm very transparent. I'm like very open to changing supplier or bringing on a new supplier. But Good. That's how I went about it.
Good. And that's what I'm going to talk about is being aware of the supplier and their skills at any point in time, and not being afraid to move away. Does anybody else want to talk about their suppliers or how they found them? If not, what about recruitment? Who's got team members? Hands up. Have we got people in your team? No one. Okay, right. So the reason I asked the question is, Ollie, I know Ollie, you. Go on then, Harry. You've got. How did you find those team members? How did you recruit people into your organisation?
Two ways really. Either by referrals, by people who had been either consultants, associates, or had somehow been in an advisory role. Eventually, we took on as a full-time role. And people who had a particular expertise in any of the related areas to which we were dealing with.
Okay. Process that you went through, did you go through the standard, interviews and testing? And the reason I ask the question is the feedback that I've got isn't uncommon. What tends to happen is when I ask entrepreneurs about how they found their suppliers, quite often recommendations, posted, really poorly. If they posted on social media and lots of people said X, Y, Z, and then they picked up with one of those. And yet when you ask about recruitment, generally people go a really robust process around, what's the job, CV shift, 3 interviews, psychometric testing, even after all that probationary period and references. So there's 2 very distinct processes. One that is robust, and gives you a better outcome. Another, I think it's just the way we've always done stuff around supplier selection. And that's where I want to home in on is doesn't matter the size of your business, there are tools available and things that you can do to make sure that you get the best supplier fit for your organization. So a little bit about me. So accountant many years ago. First business I joined, Teleperformance, outsourcer. When I joined, it was about a £600,000 turnover. I left 8 years later and my own division was doing 16 million. And at that time, I worked with startup, scale up and large FTSE 100 businesses. And what jumped out at me was the more established businesses had this very defined request for proposal, supplier selection process. So what's your insurances? What's your credibility in the industry? They used to come and do site visits. They'd interview the people. And a lot of those businesses still around today. The startups just went on price. If we were cheap enough for them, they dive in and they do no due diligence, and a lot of them don't exist. And that sort of stuck with me as a supplier at Teleperformance. I then joined, and John Caldwell, self-made billionaire. I think he cashed out for about 1.6 billion in 2006. Joined John Caldwell and set up a business when the BT market was being deregulated. I was then a buyer, 25 suppliers. I was spending about 13 million a year, and we grew a business from 0 to 430,000 customers in 2.5 years. And John sold it for 120 million. It's a big tick, but I used the processes that I'd been subjected to at Teleperformance. I used that for my own selection, and we ended up with a really good base of suppliers. I then joined HomeServe. Again, Richard Harpin, self-made. He checked out this year at 4.1 billion. I was supply side. We were affinity marketing with water companies. And as you imagine, the water companies had a very robust, rigid process for who they selected. Did a few other things after that. And then, I don't know if any of you ever watched the call centre programme on BBC Three. The company was called Save Britain Money. £150 million, that business turned over in 6 years, and it went into administration. Very little process. That business was run on the personality of the owner. Suppliers were brought in on recommendations, word of mouth. I mean, even recruitment was a bit loose, and it failed. It spectacularly failed. I mean, it shouldn't have ever gone into administration because it was a very good, profitable business. But it demonstrated how around the sides, the suppliers that were coming in, weren't the best fit for the organisation, and ultimately the whole thing just tumbled. So that's my experience. Through that, I set up Find a Business Expert. It was called Business Butler about 6 years ago, and we pivoted. And what I wanted to do was make it easier for entrepreneurs to go out and find the best suppliers for their business. And it's small things like, not all accountants are the same, not all recruitment. So if you need recruitment, you have businesses that specialise in temps, specialise in senior recruitment, specialise in sectors, manufacturing and retail. So when you're looking at suppliers, it's being aware that every sector will niche down into specialisms and matching that specialism to your need. And also, when you're sort of solopreneur and small business, you're making those choices. But as your organisation grows and other people are bringing suppliers in, you want some governance in place to make sure that they're following a formula that you've put down. And that formula is based on who is the right fit for your organisation at that time. Personal stories. I had an accountant. So after Save Britain Money, I did a management buyout of a financial services company. And I took a recommendation for an accountant, brought the accountant on board, worked with him for a couple of years. And that business didn't do as well as it should have done. And I found out subsequently that I was the only financial services client that accountant had. Now, in that industry, we're VAT exempt, wasn't aware of VAT exemption, how it worked. I think we got a building and we should have set up another business and made that, a VAT business so that we could have cross-charged. So I lost hundreds of thousands of pounds because this accountant that was recommended to me was great for the person he was working for, but wasn't the right fit for me. And I didn't ask the right questions. But we get this, I think with a lot of us, when you rely on recommendations and you see somebody, difficult for you to back out of that relationship. It's like, the great British public, we find it difficult to say no. So you end up in these supplier relationships. And I call them sometimes bad marriages. They're not working. Nobody wants to fix it. Nobody wants to walk away. So you just keep on this relationship. and that damages your business. So it's better upfront to make sure you're getting the right fit for your organisation. And I've got lots of war stories around not doing the due diligence that I saw in my previous career that worked so well, and just relying on these recommendations and getting into bed with partners that weren't right for my business. So it's always been aware of what service you need, what are the choices, and other elements of your business, who else is making those choices for you. And 10 years. So I started Find a Business Expert 2016. We had COVID, 10 years of digitization in about 10 months, and the world has changed today. So on-demand platforms, started in the US about 2015, came over into the UK probably around 2018, and Fiverr and Upwork are two really good examples of that. It's much easier now for business owners to make wider selection. You have a wider pool of people to talk to, and then make the selection that's right for you. So using the platforms that are available, a lot of these platforms will do the due diligence for you, so that you don't have to do that, the heavy lifting like Find a Business Expert does, and you can find the right person for the right job. And one of the sort of examples I use around this is that as a startup, you can get the skill set that you need for that project at that time, and then move on to another resource for something else. So I guess, back in the day, we had a HR director that would be all things people, IT, all things IT, sales. You can now go and get a recruitment specialist, psychometric specialist, with IT, software, coding, CRM system. So you can really niche down into the exact project and support that you need, find that right person. Quite often, they can be on your doorstep as well, and the tech will help you find people that are maybe within your own community, which again, I'm a big advocate of, but if possible, try and work with people that you can meet face to face. You can build a community within your location, because you'll often find the service that you get from people that you may bump into on your local high street is far better than somebody that's remote. I always say that the accountant doesn't want to see you walking into a restaurant and run out the back door because they haven't done a good job. So they'll always make sure that they're giving you a really good service. And quite often we don't find people locally because we just don't know where they are and how to exist, or how to get to them. But platforms are available that will enable you to find that individual. And then I'll show you a couple of things that you can do to check out the due diligence on them. So really change your landscape, lots of tools available for you to find the right suppliers. But I mentioned, I touched on briefly, make sure that they have experience of your situation. So, business structure, limits, if you're a limited company, you're a sole trader, the sector that you're in, tech, sales, retail, the age of your organization, early startup, 1 to 3 years, say more mature. I mean, it's unfortunate that so many businesses don't get past 4 or 5 years, but mature a business at 4 or 5 years. Find a supplier that has clients similar to you, because what you'll then get is more relevant recommendation and advice about your personal situation. So we talked somewhere about moving suppliers. There are accountants who are brilliant, at that early stage, or others that are great at scale up, others that are perfect for the exit. But most of us will stay with the same accountant that we started with, many moons ago, and you don't need to do that. So always look at your situation, check your suppliers, do they have experience in what you're doing and the stage that you're at? And if they haven't, don't be afraid to move around to another good supplier that will give you a great service and meet your needs. So with the platforms that are available now, there are experts and suppliers that will meet you at a time and a place that works for you. So it used to be like an accountant or a solicitor, Monday, Friday, 9-5, you had to go to their office. There are plenty of people out there that will see you before 9, after 5, weekends. So you can go on platforms and also have your personal choice about your preference in meeting time, in style, age of business, structure of your organisation, sector that you're in, and really sort of filter down those individuals that are going to be the best fit for your organisation. And then you do your interviews with them, which can be on Zoom or face to face, as I advocate face to face, and make sure there's some chemistry there. And so this is I guess the slide that everyone wants to know is what are the things that you should look for when doing your own due diligence on suppliers. And it's everything from ICO certification. It's not a legal requirement, but the businesses who have it have considered their compliance and making sure that everything they do is best practice. PI and PL insurance, again, not a legal requirement, but the businesses who have got it generally signify to you that they are considered businesses doing everything that's best practice to ensure that they are giving a good service. Normally the outcomes they deliver are far greater. Qualifications, professional associations. So how many people know that accounting isn't a protected term in the UK? You all know that? So I could become Sid's accountant tomorrow with no experience. I might have a couple of people that I help doing bookkeeping for. They recommend me to somebody else who says, Sid, I want you to be my accountant. I'm unlikely to say no because I want the business. So I'll learn about their sector and what they need whilst they're paying for me. So it's important that you check out your suppliers and make sure that they have got the right credibility, experience, professional associations to give you the service that you need. I've often, we're cyclical in that we get these, they're not bans, but we get things that happen like Brexit, or you had GDPR, and people invent themselves to be a supplier of that product or service because they know a little bit more than you. And do you want to really be paying for that? So it's always do your digging around organisations and the individual that's going to supply that service to you to make sure that they've got, I say, the qualifications, digital footprint. And it's easy now to go and check the LinkedIn, Companies House, who are the directors, who are the shareholders, check out the shareholder background. If there's lots of administrations, insolvencies, not the end of the world, because we all know that's sort of part of the landscape of entrepreneurship. But if there's a hint of phoenixing, you might want to consider whether they're the right supplier for you, because if things don't go well, they'll close the business. If you paid in advance or you're sort of intertwined with them, that leaves you out on a limb. So there's lots of things that you can do and check, but very time consuming. So what we've done is at Find a Business Expert, we do all of that heavy lifting for you. It's free to use. So as a buyer, no charge, you can go on, put the service in that you want, and it will give you a selection of people that you can then go and reach out to directly, have the conversation, and then if they're the right person for you, connect, and you connect directly with them. If things don't go well, we have a mediation service so that we'll dive in and help out. I think in the 6 years that we've been trading, we've only ever had 2 where the outcome wasn't what the buyer wanted, and we were able to step in. Well, one we got a refund, and the other one we resolved. So we're one of many platforms that you can go to that have done that due diligence. Use them, get a better supplier match. If you're somebody that has got all of the right credentials and you're a good supplier, then come and talk to me as well about being on our supply side. And we get I think we had 7,000 buyers last month come to the platform. 50% of them reached out. So there's an opportunity on both sides of the fence for entrepreneurs to have a better chance of being successful. It's like choose your suppliers carefully, make sure they're fit for purpose. If you're on the supply side, get involved in some of these platforms and get more people coming to you. I think the technology side is 90% of buyers now start their journey online. So you want to be found in their initial searches. They then look for social proof, which like vetted badges and somebody else doing the due diligence is what the buyer wants, because most buyers frankly don't have the time. And then through that, it works for both sides. It's like a market, two-sided marketplace that works for both sides. And even those organizations that have the badge, just lift the lid and make sure that they are doing a robust due diligence process. So which, for example, which do site visits. It takes 6 months to join them. It's very thorough. Unfortunately, Checkatrade, and I was part of the team that bought Checkatrade with HomeServe, very loose. I think they've become a volume player where their due diligence isn't great, and you can end up with not the best trader there. So just because they've got the badge doesn't mean that they've done the right sort of level of due diligence for you. Have a look at that. But going back to my start, Caldwell, Richard Harpin, Teleperformance, success stories that put resource time into choosing suppliers. Unfortunately, saved Britain money, made a lot of cash, but didn't get beyond that sort of 5-6 year cycle, and they ended up being bust. And for me, it's around the supplier selection. So I think that's me. When you're starting your organisations, supplier selection isn't talked about in accelerators in entrepreneurship, but make sure you give it some thought, give yourself a better chance of success, and just think, why would a supplier be any less important than an employee? Both of those sort of stakeholders are important assets in your journey. And it's really important that you put time and effort into both of them to get it right. Thing not to do is, in my view, don't ask for recommendations without due diligence. Definitely don't go onto social media and say, can anyone recommend a salesperson, or can anyone recommend a website person? Because we've done some research about, on average, 30 recommendations, 25 of them have never used the person they're recommending. So quite often it's an individual that might get points because they're part of a group and they get points for lead generation, or it's friends, it's family, it's people that they know. And so they're loyal to the supplier, not to the buyer. So they're not helping you when you ask for recommendations, but we get sucked up into it. That story where you might follow something through, you have a conversation with them, you then find it really difficult to get out of that conversation. So that's me. Thanks a lot for hanging around. Hopefully you got some value out of that. Q&A, over to you. I think my presentation stopped, isn't it? Yeah.
Sid, you picked up on some very, very important points this morning, and I thank you for doing so. Very good talk. I was very fortunate in my early entrepreneurial career to come across suppliers who wanted to work with us so much they gave us work. So we had reciprocal arrangements. They actually put us in installation jobs, for instance, where we were installing their products and the like. And that grew to a point where they became a bigger customer than we were to them, if you know what I mean. So there's always that to look into, and that makes the relationship even more important. But that's just something I wanted to pick up on, because every supplier is a potential customer, and a lot of founders often overlook that. But I want to put the questions out there to everyone this morning. Any questions for Sid this morning? Any of you guys? Gary.
Sid, we've got a lot of service people within our network on Startup to Stand Up. Is this something that they should be involved in or be putting themselves on your platform?
I'm going to say yes, Gary, which he's a biased view, but I would say absolutely. Yeah, I didn't want to sort of sell too much around the platform, but if I can briefly, I mean, what we do is we get our experts found online for their service. So it's like the SEO, and you can go in and Google sales coach Nottingham. One of our people is top of the Google search results. R&D Birmingham at the top. So for the service that they provide in a location, and then the longer you're with us, it becomes national. We get you found, and that feeds into the 90% of buyers today start their search online. When they're looking for anything, it's onto Google, which isn't surprising, because when you think about your own experience, anything that I want to buy these days or I'm not sure about, I jump on Google and I go, what's that telling me? In an organization, somebody will say, we need X. The person who's responsible for finding X dives on Google and starts that initial search. So you want to get into that. And then you want to drive traffic, Gary. to your own platforms. There's lots of organizations that have spent good money on websites, not driving traffic to it, and we'll get you traffic there, and then we do loads of networking. The thing with us is, we've made it affordable. So our service, like £40 a month, 50 or 60, depending on whether you go monthly, 6 monthly, or annually, with no contractual tie-in, because we know that we get people found in that sales funneling. You've got to get in at the top to go to stage 2, stage 3, and so forth. So how do you get into the top that's affordable? SEO's £500 a month, PPC's thousands of pounds a month. You're looking at, I've worked out probably £2,000 a month is a budget that you would need for a business that's ambitious and wants to scale, to cover all of the bases. You can do that with us for £60 a month.
Thanks, Gary. Andrea.
Sid, just a question. How would you recommend checking out suppliers who are abroad?
Yeah, very, very, very difficult, because you can't, we haven't got the company's house and the credit score and the qualifications. So that generally, and when you use Fiverr, it is just based on the reviews. But again, platforms, we've all heard, like, there's lots of fake reviews. So not surprisingly, my mom says I'm brilliant at what I do. So the best way is that the reviews come from validated purchases. So if you look at Amazon, for example, when they have their reviews now, they grade them with those customers that have made the purchase versus those that haven't. So when you're on a platform or you're looking for somebody, then look for reviews that have been validated by the provider. When you go overseas, again, you're asking for testimonials. Of course, they're going to give you the testimonials that say they're the best at what they do. I mean, what we do, actually, we ask, when an expert comes on board, we ask for their last 10, 20 sales, and we randomly pick individuals, and we go and validate that individual made a purchase, and the review that they've got on it is a genuine review. So you could do that, and I would, it depends on the ticket item, but if you have got the time, I would ask for the last 5, 10 sales, randomly pick somebody from there, go and have a conversation with them. But apart from that, overseas is difficult. But Andrew, can I ask, what sort of service are you thinking of for overseas?
Oh, it really varies. It's people who can potentially be introducers or help to get something off the ground. I think, well, what I'm finding out is you don't have to have a company number in the States. You don't have to have business insurance, and doing across the Atlantic makes it very difficult, because, of course, then you have to have a data policy framework in place just to exchange. If we have a lead here and we want somebody to go check it out, we'd have to have something in place. So it's tremendously vague.
No, I mean, it's a great question. I'm a massive advocate of working locally and working on your home patch if you can. I think that, again, because for example, I live in the Mumbles. If I'm making my money in the Mumbles in Swansea, I want to spend my money in the Mumbles in Swansea. I know with COVID, remote working has become much more popular, and we're doing that. But I think actually, if you can find people within your location and you can work with them as the startup to get off the ground, and then you expand out, but try and find people locally if you can, rather than going overseas. And there's which may not be what you want to hear. But there's a lot of VAs that people work with, and do sales coach, all sorts of services that come in cheaper. But quite often, my 30 years, you do get what you pay for. And so you end up taking longer to get to your goal because you've not spent, what you could do. Business requires investment, speculate to accumulate, and you've got to spend money and get the right people around you, and that will give you a better chance of success.
So can I just interject here for a minute. When you're talking about the United States, which parts of the United States are you talking about?
Well, that's a whole other thing, of course, because each state is different.
Yeah, but the point I was going to make is that if you're trying to do due diligence on a company, you know the company, you know where they are. One of the things, because we do some work in the States as well, and I was quite fortunate because I worked with these people in the past, but one of the things I find is you've got like Brown Rudnick now, you've got O'Neill's, the solicitors companies, and there are others, got CRS, various legal companies based in London. What we found when we were trying to do due diligence on potential suppliers or potential customers was that if we talked to the lawyers, they didn't know about the companies, but generally speaking, they were prepared to do something to help you. Now,
Well,
that means going along to network meetings as well. Sorry, go on.
No, not at all. I mean, I am fortunate enough to know an investigator. Actually, he's joined one of our meetings, I think. And so that's the one place to start. At least you can find out. He'll do a background check, but it's not satisfactory, wholly satisfactory.
And Andrew, what are you selling into the States?
Pardon me?
What's the service that you're offering? Is it into the States or back into here?
InfoSec,
Which is
information security,
okay.
or highly restricted special category data.
And it's specifically into the US market. So
Yes, trying to get a toehold.
okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the things I'll share is, so we're a community of like 5,000 professionals, and we've got 2 American membership groups that are part of our group, and they do online networking. And we found American business owners love to work with the Brits because that due diligence and checking seems to be far more robust over here in the UK than it is in the US. So we do find a lot of their entrepreneurs are working with our experts from the UK because they can, I guess, just feel more confident. Haven't seen much going the other way though. But you're welcome. You're welcome to join that group, and there's loads of American businesses in there, and find somebody that's on patch that will know how to get the information that you're looking to get.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of the AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce, and I will make that suggestion because they do operate in London. So good place to start. Thanks, Sid.
Thank you very much, Sid. It's been a wonderful session this morning. If anyone from Startup to Stand Up wants, Sid has kindly given us a promo / discount code for Startup to Stand Up members. Lee can distribute that later. That can be put out on WhatsApp and our own platform, Circle. So any last questions for Sid, or we all okay? Sid, you're going to get a lot of love and big ups and handshakes today on LinkedIn and various other social media networks. But that was really, really good.
Thank you, Ollie. Hopefully
back any time, Sid, and you was far too modest about your background. I was hoping you was going to give a little bit about the Channel 4 documentaries you were on.
No, try and keep my head down. As a big face for radio, I think I often get told.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you that often.
But I think again, Ollie, brilliant community. The sessions I've joined in, and the entrepreneurship is just such a tough gig that the more support and love people can get, the better chance we have of getting more success stories out of it. And that's why I do what I do, and we do it because we want businesses to be successful.
When I first started in '99, if only I had something like this, it would have been a very different journey. But great. Thank you,
everyone. Cheers. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.